The 2000s. The baggy kits, the freedom of choosing how you wanted to play the game. The art of a pure slide tackle where you not only take out some grass, but the man and a bit of the ball too. Now looking back in time, I've always loved the 2000s era of football, but it's a shame because like many of you watching this video, I didn't really get to experience it firsthand. Like, I'm not even gonna lie, I'm a 2010s merchant, a connoisseur. You ask me anything about the football era from the 2010s and I'll be able to tell you. I'll start bringing up some random players from the 2010s era like Raul Morales from Chelsea. It's well known now that the 2000s were a golden era for football. The amount of top players that were active was literal insanity. Back in the 2000s, it was like every single team in each league had a one player that could just flip the 90 minutes on its head. The oversized kits that the players were wearing, the lack of inflation in the transfer market, with only the best having a significant transfer fee. Ronaldinho joined Barcelona from PSG for a measly 32 million euros. Right now that'd get you probably Reece Nelson and a bag of chips. There was no room for faded haircuts, no dominance on which league had the best quality, and your favourite players would have no restrictions placed on them during games. Meaning that yes, at least once a game, a player would go on a marauding run, taking on multiple players. The aesthetic of football in the 2000s was just purely magical. During these years, players played with pure passion and left it all out on the pitch. And nowadays, unless it's international football, no one's really playing like this anymore. Remember when players would just let it go and take shots from outside the box and see if they could catch the keeper off guard? Now, sports science has been brought into the game and players are not taking shots from outside the 18-yard box. And why? Well, because the odds of the shot going in are too low. So players are discouraged from actually expressing themselves and shooting whenever they'd like. We only tend to see football being played in the modern era with freedom in international competitions. That's because the managers that they have in the international level are not banging on about all these little tactics because they only work with them for a few months a year. Football today is way too predictable, with most teams all playing it safe, moving the ball into the wings and trying to get as many balls into the box. The element of surprise, in my opinion, is completely gone from domestic football. Well, in the top 5 leagues that is. Back in the 2000s, the lack of social media was also beneficial, making players more attached to their club, their job and how fans reacted in game. All these factors could directly affect a player's performance. It's like players had a more genuine relationship with their clubs. Nowadays, a 5-0 loss would result in a heartless Instagram story or a Twitter post. But back during the prime 2000s era, the apology would be a statement in the next game. There would be no hiding behind this screen. You'd have to prove that you were good enough to play for this club in the next game live. There were defenders who were real men, going headfirst into challenges, and no, I am not talking about Phil Jones. These guys were leading their teams and oozing this brawlic aura. They were not playing football for 90 minutes, they were going to war. I personally think that defenders individually during the 2000s were a lot better than defenders today. However, defensive systems have come about and that's why defenses have got a lot stronger over the years. The individuals were handling it during the 2000s, but over time this couldn't sustain itself, so managers implemented whole team tactics to make a defense a unit, to make attackers more fearful and to therefore concede less goals. Football was more than a sport during the 2000s, it was entertainment. Stories that you would never think of happening would happen in a matter of days. Everything now is just more predictable. Fabrizio Romano will tell you that the biggest transfer in the history of football is going to happen 6 months before it even happens. What's the actual point? In 2006 there were 12 players that were Ballon d'Or level playing in the World Cup. Guys who had previously won the award or who would go on to win the award in their careers. Cristiano Ronaldo, Messi, R9, Cannavaro, Kaká, Modric, Ronaldinho, Shevchenko, Zidane, Michael Owen, Figo and Nedved. You couldn't question the quality that was on show during the 2000s. Hundreds of players can be named that dominated during these times. And I think the guys that grew up during this era are the ones that are disappointed with what football has become right now. But even from a third person's perspective, the 2000s era of football just felt and looked more like football. The 2000s were a time of one size fits all, with all players being able to fit into the game however they wanted to, not binded or restricted by tactics or their tight tailored kits. I think the 2000s were not only blessed with some of the greatest footballing talents of all time, but they also had some of the best sides of all time. Fans of the 2000s witnessed the renaissance of AC Milan, the dream side of Real Madrid Galacticos, an invincible Arsenal side, an immortal Chelsea, and a prime Man United that harboured the early flair of Cristiano Ronaldo. Another part of 2000s football that was so appealing was the authentic hype that things got. The internet and satellite TV created a rise in anticipation for certain events to take place. One great example is David Beckham's move to Real Madrid, which was worldwide news, transcending this local lad into global stardom overnight. Money was also beginning to be seriously injected into teams. Roman Abramovich's acquisition of Chelsea in 2003 changed the landscape of football entirely, with his investments into Chelsea starting a revolution of big spenders in football. And before you assume I forgot, yes, the dominance of Serie A was prevalent during the 2000s. It was a golden era for not only football, but for Italian football specifically, with Italians showcasing some of the best football in Europe, marked by the rise of iconic clubs like Milan, Inter and Juventus, each contributing to the league's dominance. I mean, Juventus had a whole scandal happen in the 2000s, which saw them get relegated and stripped of titles. And despite this happening, the league still remained competitive and everyone else kind of stepped up. And it's not like it was just 3 teams that had good players. All of the sides in the league had brilliant players during these times. Fiorentina had Gabriel Batistuta in the 2000 and 2001 season, who scored 20 in 34 Serie A appearances. This guy was key during the early stages of the 2000s and eventually moved to Roma and won a league title with them too. Udinese had Antonio Di Natale, which most of you know from his FIFA card. From 2004 to 2009, this guy had 74 goals in 150 appearances, being the top goal scorer for not only his side, but also topping the league at one point. Diego Milito, another Argentinian striker, famously known for his run with Inter Milan, but he started off at Genoa and he was also a baller there too. Even Enrico Chiesa, the father of the Juventus winger. And there's obvious picks that played during this time too, like Trezeguet, Del Piero, Francesco Totti, Nesta. The 2000s were a golden era for football, a time for incredible talent, historic matches and significant transformation. It was a decade that left an incredible mark on the sport. And to answer the question in the title of this video, why did 2000s football look like that? It's because that was football. Football will never lose what the 2000s era created. And although many people call it the golden era, I think it's time to start looking forward and start looking at the era that we are currently in today. Now, if you want to support this channel, you can join it right there. There's a couple tiers to the memberships. Go and check them out. And of course, if you like this video, make sure you leave a like, comment, subscribe. And of course, this has been Jib Rules. Stay safe, stay blessed, and peace.